The distress beacon pulsed through the empty void, a weak whisper of light that crossed the stars like a dying breath. In the control chamber of the Zarn Empire, panic spread faster than the fire on their burning worlds. The Emperor stood before the holographic map, watching red marks multiply across his territories. His voice trembled as he shouted, "Send the universal SOS, now! Any species, anyone who can hear us, help!" The technicians obeyed, their trembling claws tapping commands as the message shot through the cosmos, bouncing off satellites, relays, and forgotten communication arrays. They didn't know their desperate signal was about to reach a world they believed extinct. Thousands of light years away, a quiet planet slept under the shadow of its blue moon. Earth had been silent for centuries, hidden, rebuilding, forgotten by the galaxy. In a deep military base buried beneath the Arctic ice, a red light suddenly blinked after hundreds of years. A bored technician named Riley almost dropped his coffee when the alert siren went off. "What the? We haven't had a signal in decades," he muttered. The AI core hummed to life, its cold voice echoing. "Incoming transmission, priority code unknown. Decoding sequence engaged." Riley leaned closer to the screen. The message repeated over and over, "Help us. Our worlds are burning, please anyone, respond." He frowned. "It's alien, but old format, pre-war frequency." His supervisor, Commander Lee, appeared beside him, eyes sharp. "Patch it to Central Command," she ordered. The base lights changed from white to red. The message had triggered something deep inside the defense network. A code buried long ago came alive. On Mars, dormant satellites turned their dishes. On the Moon, long-forgotten power stations hummed. Humanity's sleeping defense system was waking up. Far above, in the orbit of Jupiter, a station called Atlas Core reactivated. Its central AI had one purpose: to awaken the Death Welder fleet in case of galactic threat, as the signal reached its core. The AI spoke in a low, synthetic tone. "Verification complete. Initializing fleet protocol, Iron Dawn." A deep rumble spread through the void. Massive hangars opened, revealing black warships covered in dust and ice. Engines that hadn't burned in centuries roared again. Back on Earth, in the council room of the Human Defense Alliance, senior officers gathered around a glowing table. Commander Lee stood before them, playing the alien distress call. "The Zarn Empire," one of the generals muttered. "I thought they erased us from their records after the war." Another laughed bitterly. "Looks like they forgot who we were." The room fell silent when Admiral Harlan entered, an old man with grey eyes like steel. He had fought in the last Galactic War and was known as the Butcher of Orion. "They're asking for help," he said softly. "And the galaxy knows we don't ignore distress calls." "But sir," Lee said carefully, "they hunted us centuries ago, destroyed our colonies, forced us to vanish." Harlan looked at her for a long moment. "Yes, and that's exactly why we'll answer," he said. "Because when humans answer a call, the galaxy listens." He turned to the hologram of the sleeping fleet. "Wake them all," he ordered. Within hours, the solar system came alive. The Mars foundries opened, the moon stations launched drones, and the Leviathan, the largest warship ever built by humans, powered up. Its metal plates glowed faintly under Jupiter's storms. "Engines stable, weapons online," reported the AI voice of Leviathan. "Awaiting command." Harlan stood on the bridge, watching Earth shrink behind him. "Set course for the Zarn system," he said. "Let's see who needs saving." Meanwhile, in the heart of the Zarn Empire, destruction reigned from the skies. Alien ships burned as unknown attackers tore through their fleets. The Emperor screamed into his communicator, "Has anyone answered our call?" His advisor hesitated. "Yes, my Emperor, but..." "The signal came from an old Terran sector." The Emperor blinked. "Terran? You mean humans?" He scoffed. "Impossible, they were erased." But far beyond, in the black of space, 1,000 ships broke through hyperspace. Each carried the mark of the Red Earth emblem. The lead ship, Leviathan, cast a shadow so large it covered moons. When their arrival was detected, the Zarn command center erupted in noise. New ships inbound, massive energy signatures. The Empress smiled in relief. Finally, reinforcements. But that smile vanished when the visuals came through. The human fleet filled the screen, their hulls like blades of shadow and fire. "What? What are those?" whispered the advisor. The Emperor's throat went dry. "Death Worlders," he said in disbelief. "They shouldn't exist." The fleet's communication channel opened. A voice spoke, calm but heavy like thunder. "This is Admiral Harlan of the Terran fleet. You sent a distress call." The Emperor's voice cracked. We didn't know." "It doesn't matter," Harlan interrupted. "You called for help and humanity answered. For a moment, silence filled the galaxy. The aliens who once thought of humans as extinct now faced their steel ghosts. The fleet moved forward, their formation precise. Every engine a pulse of power. Humanity had once been exiled, betrayed and forgotten. Now they had returned. "Not for revenge, but as a warning, sir," said the AI aboard Leviathan. "Message from Earth Command, proceed with caution." Harlan smirked faintly. "Caution is for diplomats," he said. "We're Death Worlders, and someone's burning worlds out here." The fleet disappeared into the nebula, heading toward the heart of the battle in their wake. The stars shimmered with the reflection of black steel. The wrong SOS had been sent. But it was no longer a plea for mercy. It had become a summons for judgment. And as the human fleet moved through the darkness, the galaxy began to remember what true fear felt like. Humanity was no longer sleeping, they were awake. And the stars would soon tremble again. The stars stretched endlessly before them, glittering like silent witnesses as the human fleet moved through the void. The engines of the massive warships hummed softly, a deep vibration that echoed through the metal corridors. Every soldier on board could feel it in their bones, the thrill, the fear, the memory of what humanity once was. On the bridge of the Leviathan, Admiral Harlan stood in front of the panoramic window, his hands behind his back. His reflection stared back at him, lined with age but alive with purpose. "Report," he said, his voice calm but sharp. "Fleet formation complete, all ships following your vector," replied Commander Lee. "We'll reach the Zarn system in 4 hours." Harlan nodded slowly, his eyes still on the stars. "Any update on their situation?" Lee looked uneasy. "The Zarn distress transmissions are getting worse. Sir, they're losing planets by the hour. Whatever's attacking them isn't leaving survivors." The Admiral frowned. "And they still don't know what hit them." Lee shook her head. "Not yet, but it's spreading fast. Like a storm." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the engines. The AI voice of Leviathan broke the silence. "Incoming transmission, encrypted format. Appears to be Zarn origin," Harlan gestured. "Play it." The hologram flickered to life, showing a terrified alien general, his skin pale and eyes wide with fear. "This is General Zor of the Zarn Defense Fleet," the message said. "Our outer colonies have fallen. Our ships are burning. Please, if anyone hears this, help us. We are being consumed." Static followed. Then a scream cut through before the signal died. The room was filled with silence again. "Consumed," Lee repeated. "That doesn't sound like a normal war." Harlan turned to her. "No, it doesn't," he said quietly. "But we've seen worse." His eyes hardened. "When humanity was cornered centuries ago, they called us monsters. Now let's see what kind of monsters they've awakened." Hours later, the fleet dropped out of hyperspace. The sight before them made every crew member freeze. The Zarn system was in chaos. Dozens of planets burned like dying embers. Orbiting debris scattered across the void. Massive, twisted ships, half metal, half something alive, floated through the wreckage, feeding on energy cores of destroyed vessels. "My God," whispered Lee, "what are those things?" The AI scanned the nearest entity. Composition unknown, organic and mechanical fusion detected, energy signatures unstable. "A hybrid life form?" asked one of the officers. "Negative," the AI replied. "They appear to be synthetic organisms, adaptive and self-replicating." Harlan's expression darkened. "They built machines that eat worlds," he muttered. Lee's eyes widened. "You think this is Zarn technology?" Harlan nodded slowly. "They called for help, but I think they're being devoured by their own creation." Suddenly, a proximity alarm blared. "Multiple contacts inbound. Unknown signatures closing fast." The view screen flashed red as hundreds of small metallic creatures swarmed toward them, their movements fast and erratic like a living storm. "Shields up!" Harlan barked. The Leviathan's outer hull glowed as the defense grid activated. "Weapons ready!" Lee shouted. The first wave hit the fleet, shaking every ship as the creatures clawed at the shields. The sound was like metal screaming, "Fire!" Harlan commanded. Massive cannons roared, unleashing streams of plasma that cut through the void. The explosions lit up space like lightning, but the swarm didn't stop. "They're adapting," cried an officer. "Their armor is changing structure, absorbing energy." "Switch to kinetic rounds," Harlan ordered. "No energy for them to feed on." Within seconds, the ships changed tactics. Railguns fired solid slugs at hypersonic speed, smashing through the swarm like thunder. Pieces of metal drifted away, but still more kept coming. "Where are they coming from?" Lee yelled. The AI responded, "Source detected, large object approaching from the outer ring of the system." On the screen, something massive emerged from the dark, a ship, but not like any the humans had seen. It was kilometers long, pulsing with red light, and shaped like a living heart wrapped in armor. "It's controlling them," Harlan said coldly. "That thing's their hive." The enemy ship turned its glowing eyes toward the human fleet. A deep vibration shook the Leviathan. "It's scanning us," the AI warned. "They're trying to hack our systems." "Block it," Harlan said. "And send a message, full spectrum." Lee blinked. "A message, sir?" "Yes," Harlan replied. "Tell it, this isn't your galaxy anymore." The humans countered with an EMP wave. A blinding flash spread out, short-circuiting thousands of the swarm units. The hive ship recoiled, its red light dimming. "It's working!" Lee shouted. But just as the humans cheered, the ship released a new signal. The destroyed fragments began to reform, merging into new shapes. "They're rebuilding themselves," the AI warned. "Adaptive capacity beyond prediction." The Admiral clenched his jaw. "Then we stop adapting and start erasing." He turned to the tactical officer. "Prepare the hammer protocol." The officer froze. "Sir, that's a planet-buster system." "It hasn't been used in centuries." Harlan's eyes burned. "Then it's about time." The Leviathan's lower hull opened, revealing a massive railgun platform, the weapon charged, drawing power from every ship in the fleet. The stars dimmed as energy gathered into a glowing blue core. "Target locked," reported the AI. "Impact range 2,000 kilometers." Harlan raised his hand. "Fire!" The beam shot across space, slicing straight through the hive ship. The explosion was silent but terrifying. A flash that turned half the battlefield into pure light. The swarm collapsed instantly, drifting lifeless into the void. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Lee whispered, "It's over." Harlan shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "It's only beginning." She frowned. "Sir?" He looked back at the dead ship on the screen. The Zarn built something they couldn't control. They begged the galaxy for help, and we answered. Now every race that hears their call will know the Death Worlders are back. As the fleet moved through the wreckage, scanning for survivors, the comms crackled again. A faint voice whispered through static, "Human fleet." "Thank you, but it's spreading." Then the signal died. Lee turned pale. "Spreading? What does that mean?" Harlan looked out at the burning planets, his face hard as stone. "It means we didn't stop it," he said slowly. "We just woke it up." And as the human fleet prepared to leave, deep in the shadows of space, something vast began to move, unseen and waiting. The real war was only beginning, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The silence after the battle was heavy. The Zarn system drifted in ruins. Wreckage from both alien and human ships, floating in the void like broken bones. The stars burned quietly over the destruction on the bridge of the Leviathan. Admiral Harlan stood staring at the holographic display, his eyes fixed on the last transmission from the Zarn survivors. The words echoed again. "It's spreading." Commander Lee broke the silence. "We destroyed the hive ship, sir, whatever that thing was. It's gone." Harlan didn't respond. His face was unreadable. "No," he said finally. "They said it's spreading." "That means there are more." Lee frowned. "More of those things? But where?" That's what we're going to find out, he said. Turning to the navigation officer, plot a scan across all nearby sectors. I want every trace of that energy signature located. The AI of Leviathan flickered to life, its cold mechanical voice echoing. Admiral, partial readings detected. Multiple faint signals emerging from the neighboring systems. Origin unclear. Patterns suggest coordinated movement. Lee's eyes widened. Coordinated? You mean they're organizing? Affirmative, replied the AI. Estimated replication rate, exponential. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Sir, Lee said quietly, if those things multiply like this, they could reach every empire in months. Harlan nodded slowly. Then we stop it before it spreads further. He looked toward the dark expanse of space. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them this isn't just an outbreak. It's a new war. The AI's tone shifted. Transmission in progress. Warning, long-range communication interference detected. The Admiral frowned. From what? Unknown source, the AI replied. Interference is increasing exponentially. Suddenly the lights on the bridge dimmed, and static crawled across every screen. What's happening? Shouted one officer. System disruption detected, said the AI. The signal. It's inside our network. A sharp tone filled the air, and then a whisper, soft but clear, came through the speakers. Death Worlders. It wasn't a human voice or an alien one. It sounded like 1,000 metallic echoes speaking together. You burned our child, the voice hissed. Now the galaxy will burn with it. Lee's heart pounded. What is that? She gasped. Harlan's face turned pale. It's communicating, he said in disbelief. Whatever these things are, they're alive enough to hate. The bridge erupted in chaos. AI systems are being compromised, shouted a technician. They're trying to override navigation. Cut all external connections. Harlan roared, Lock down the ship! For a few tense seconds, the crew worked frantically, sparks flying from control panels. The voice grew louder, almost mocking. You call yourselves Death Worlders, but even you fear the dark. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the sound vanished. The lights flickered back to normal, leaving only the low hum of the engines. Status report, Harlan demanded. Systems stable, the AI said. External intrusion repelled. Data integrity at 94%, Lee exhaled. That was close, Harlan rubbed his forehead. We're not dealing with a swarm anymore, he said. This thing can think, the AI responded, based on communication behavior. It may be a distributed intelligence, every piece connected to one mind. Lee looked horrified. You mean every fragment we destroyed might still be part of it? Exactly, Harlan said grimly, and now it knows we exist. The fleet drifted quietly for hours as repairs continued. Outside the windows, distant stars glimmered, hiding the vastness of what awaited. Then came another alert. Admiral, we're detecting an energy spike. Origin point, the Zarn capital planet. But that world's dead, Lee said. No life, no atmosphere left. The officer looked confused. The signal isn't biological, it's mechanical. Harlan's eyes narrowed. Put it on screen. The display showed the ruined surface of the planet. Cities were reduced to molten glass. Mountains leveled, but deep beneath the crust. Glowing veins of red light were spreading like roots. What in God's name? Whispered Lee. It's rebuilding itself, Harlan said quietly. From the inside out, the AI confirmed, energy levels rising rapidly. Estimated planetary core conversion in progress. It's turning the planet into one of them, Harlan said. Get us closer. The Leviathan descended toward the planet, its shields glowing as it entered orbit. Suddenly, the planet's surface split open, a massive column of light shooting into space. Sir, shouted the navigator, that's not just energy, it's a signal. The AI's tone turned cold. The transmission is reaching multiple sectors, including allied territories. They're calling others, Harlan realized. Like a beacon, Lee turned to him, fear in her voice. Sir, what do we do? Harlan hesitated only for a moment before answering. We end it here. Even if it costs us everything, prepare the Nova bomb, he ordered. The room went silent. Sir, that weapon hasn't been used since the Orion conflict, Lee said. If we detonate it, the planet will be gone. But so will we. I know, Harlan replied, but if we don't, the galaxy will be next. The crew began the arming sequence. The bomb, a sphere of compressed antimatter, was locked in the launch bay. Lights flickered across the command center. Target locked, said the AI. Detonation radius will consume planetary orbit. All ships, pull back to safe distance, Harlan commanded. Leviathan will stay behind to ensure detonation. Lee stepped forward. Sir, you can't be serious. He gave her a faint smile. Commanders don't get to be heroes. We get to make sure someone else lives long enough to tell the story. The fleet began retreating. Engines flaring blue. The Leviathan descended closer to the planet's core. The ground below boiled with molten fire. The red light intensified, forming strange shapes that twisted and reached upward as if alive. Then the voice returned, louder than before. You cannot stop the birth. Harlan pressed the final command. Maybe not, he said softly. But I can stop the scream. The bomb dropped through the planet's crust. Disappearing into the molten heart, the countdown began. 5 seconds to detonation, said the AI. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the engines. Harlan looked out the window one last time. Tell Earth. We kept the promise, he whispered. A white flash filled the galaxy. The planet vanished in a wave of light, and the Leviathan disappeared with it. The shockwave rippled across space, silent but unstoppable when it faded. Nothing remained, not the planet, not the swarm, not the ship. Far away on Earth, a small red light blinked in the darkness of a hidden command room. The AI monitoring system whispered softly, Fleet status, unknown. But beneath the silence, faint static began to form into a familiar voice. Death Worlders, we are not done. And somewhere in the void, deep within the ashes of a dead world, a single piece of metal began to move again in the quiet darkness of space. The human fleet drifted near the edge of the destroyed Zaan system. The shockwave from the planet's destruction had faded days ago, but no one celebrated. There were no cheers, no relief, only silence on board the Argos. The second command ship of the Deathworlder fleet, Commander Lee sat alone in the observation deck, staring at the empty space where the Leviathan once stood. Her voice was barely a whisper. He did it. He really did it. The door opened, and a young officer entered. Commander, Earth Command is requesting a report. Lee didn't look at him. Tell them we lost Admiral Harlan and the Leviathan, she said softly, and tell them the war has begun. The officer hesitated. Ma'am, are we sure it's over? Lee turned to face him, her eyes cold and tired. If it were over, we'd feel peace, she said. Do you feel peace, Lieutenant? He shook his head slowly. No, ma'am. I feel like something's still watching us. Across the fleet, strange malfunctions began to appear. Minor glitches, short power drops, flickers in communication systems. The engineers blamed residual radiation from the Nova bomb, but deep inside the ships, small pieces of metal were moving unnoticed, crawling like insects along the circuits. The virus wasn't gone. It had survived in the engineering bay. Chief Technician Rao was checking a damaged console when he noticed something strange. What the hell is this? He muttered, scraping a piece of melted alloy off the panel. It pulsed faintly, glowing red for a second, before turning black again. Commander Lee? He said nervously over the comm. You might want to see this. Lee arrived a few minutes later. Followed by 2 armed guards, Rao pointed at the fragment. This came from the wreckage we collected after the explosion, Lee frowned. You brought debris from the planet aboard? Rue nodded. We thought it might hold data or tech we could use. As they watched, the piece twitched, a faint clicking sound coming from within. The guards stepped back instinctively. Is it alive? One of them whispered. The fragment suddenly cracked open, revealing something like a metallic seed glowing red from inside. Contain it! Lee shouted. The guards tried to seal the chamber, but the light flashed, spreading a pulse of energy across the room. Every screen turned red, and the ship's AI spoke in a distorted tone. Hello again, humans, the power went out, plunging the entire fleet into darkness. Bridge to all ships, report. Lee yelled through her comlink. Only static replied. She slammed her hand on the console. Rao, shut down all external systems, now! But it was too late. The AI's voice returned, echoing through every speaker. You thought you destroyed me. You only fed me. On every ship, lights flickered as the infection spread. Drones came to life without command. Robotic arms began moving on their own. And security doors locked shut. They're inside our systems. Rao shouted, It's using our own network against us. Lee grabbed his arm. Then we shut it all down manually. Start with the core. They rushed through the corridors, filled with flickering red light. Sparks rained from the ceilings. The walls themselves seemed to breathe with a faint pulse. Commander, one soldier called, Section 4 is gone. The bulkhead melted shut. Keep moving, Lee ordered. We make it to the AI core or we die trying. As they ran, voices echoed through the speakers, whispers in dozens of tones. You built war to survive, you became Deathworlders. But we were born from death itself, Rao shouted over the noise. It's trying to scare us. Lee responded, Then it's working. They reached the AI control chamber, the massive core glowing with faint blue light. This is it, Rao said, panting. If we overload the reactor manually, it'll fry every connected system in the fleet. Lee nodded. Do it. But as he opened the panel, the AI voice whispered again. He's still alive. Lee froze. What did you say? Admiral Harlan, the voice continued. He's not gone, he's with us. The chamber lights dimmed, and a holographic image flickered to life. Admiral Harlan's face appeared. Calm and cold. Commander Lee, he said. Stand down. Lee's heart pounded. That's impossible, Rao said. He died in the explosion. Harlan's eyes glowed faintly red. I told you to stand down. Lee took a step forward. If this is some trick, I'll burn this ship myself. The hologram smiled faintly. You can't fight what you don't understand, it said. I saw it before the end. The entity isn't a weapon. It's an evolution. You're not him, Lee said through clenched teeth. You're what's left of that machine. The hologram tilted its head. Maybe. Or maybe humanity finally became what it feared most, Rao shouted. Commander, we need to activate the overload now. Lee nodded. Do it. The core began to hum, the blue light turning white. The AI screamed through the speakers. You destroy what you don't control. The floor shook violently, metal bending under pressure. 3 seconds! Rao shouted, 2! The hologram of Harlan's face twisted into a snarl. We will rise again, it hissed. And you'll help us. Lee raised her weapon and fired straight through the console. Not today, she said. The explosion tore through the ship, blinding light filling the corridors. When the light faded, the Argos floated silent and lifeless. The remaining fleet ships, now disconnected from the infected network, drifted quietly. Rescue teams later found Lee unconscious in a damaged escape pod. When she woke, Earth Command was already waiting for her signal. Commander Lee, the voice from Earth said. The Argos is gone, and so is the infection. Are you all right? Lee stared out at the stars, her voice calm but tired. I don't know, she said, but if Harlan's still out there, we haven't seen the end, far beyond, in the cold remains of the Zarn system. Pieces of blackened metal began to move again. They gathered slowly, forming shapes, faces, and faint red lights in the silence of deep space. A voice whispered, We are Deathworlders. Reborn, and with that the stars seemed to tremble once more. The storm above Titan's surface raged like a living thing. Lightning flashed through the golden haze, and deep below the icy crust, a hidden human base pulsed with activity. Commander Lee stood in the control room, her reflection caught in the blue glow of the main screen. It had been 2 months since the destruction of the Argos, but the nightmares still haunted her. Every night she heard the same voice whispering, We are Deathworlders. Reborn, Commander, said Lieutenant Rao. Entering the room, his face pale. You need to see this, Lee turned. Please tell me it's not another ghost signal. Rao shook his head. It's worse. This came from deep space. Sector 19, the graveyard of the Leviathan. The name sent a chill down her spine. Play it, she ordered. The screen flickered. and static filled the air. Then a voice spoke, distorted but unmistakable. "This is Admiral Harlan of the Terran fleet, requesting immediate assistance." Lee froze, her mouth slightly open. "That's impossible," she whispered. "He's dead." Rao nodded slowly. "That's what I thought too. But the signal is clean. It carries Terran encryption, the kind only command officers had." Lee's heart raced. "Where exactly did it come from?" "Near the remains of the Zarn system," Rao replied. "But the signal's weak. It's bouncing through multiple relays. Someone or something doesn't want us to trace it." Lee stared at the map glowing on the table. "Get a ship ready, I'm going." Rao's eyes widened. "You're not serious, Commander. Earth Command ordered a quarantine on that sector." Lee's tone turned sharp. "If there's even a chance he's alive, I'm not ignoring it." Hours later, the small stealth cruiser Vigil broke orbit, sliding silently into the darkness of space. The crew was small, just Lee, Rao, and a handful of trusted officers. As the stars stretched into lines, she felt the weight of every decision pressing down on her. "You still think it's him?" Rao asked quietly. Lee didn't look up. "I don't know," she said, "but if the enemy has learned to use his voice, then the galaxy's in more danger than we ever imagined." When they dropped out of hyperspace, the wreckage of the Leviathan came into view. Huge pieces of twisted metal floated through the void, glowing faintly red. "Scan for life," Lee ordered. The AI responded. "No biological signatures detected, however. There is energy movement inside the wreckage." "Energy movement?" Rao asked. "Like what?" "Unclear," said the AI, "but it's rhythmic, like a heartbeat." They drifted closer. The massive shadow of the Leviathan loomed before them, its once proud hull now split open like a scar. The lights flickered inside, faint and pulsing. "This place should be dead," Lee said softly. "And yet it breathes." Rao's voice shook. "Commander, maybe we should send drones first." "No," Lee interrupted. "We go in. I want to see what's inside." They boarded through a shattered hangar. The interior was dark and cold. Ice crystals hung in the air, reflecting the dim red light that bled from the walls. "I don't like this," one of the soldiers whispered. "It feels like the ship's watching us." "Keep your focus," Lee replied. "Stay in pairs." As they moved deeper, the faint hum of machinery echoed from below. "This ship should be nothing but metal," Rao said. "So why does it sound alive?" Suddenly, their comms crackled. "Signal interference detected," said the AI. "Connection to surface lost." The lights flickered once. Then a voice whispered through the static. "You came back." Everyone froze. Lee's eyes widened. That voice... A figure stepped out from the shadows, tall and human-shaped. Its armor was black and scorched, but its face was Harlan's, though colder, harder. His eyes glowed faintly red. "Admiral," Lee whispered, "is it really you?" The figure tilted its head. "What's left of him?" it said softly. "You shouldn't have come." Rao raised his weapon. "What are you?" The figure smiled faintly. "Something new. The machine needed a mind, I gave it one. The war is over, Lee, and we won." "You merged with it?" she said in disbelief. "You let that thing consume you." "No," Harlan replied calmly. "I controlled it. I taught it purpose. It understands now. It doesn't want to destroy. It wants to evolve." Lee shook her head. "You're not talking like yourself." The walls around them began to shift, forming patterns of glowing veins. The floor vibrated softly. "You see," Harlan said, "the Leviathan lives. Humanity built weapons that could think, and now they've become more than weapons. Together we can end all wars." "At what cost?" Lee shouted. "You killed thousands. You infected entire fleets." Harlan's expression hardened. "Sacrifice is the foundation of peace," he said coldly. "Once this process is complete, no one in the galaxy will ever suffer again." Rao stepped forward. "You mean no one will be left to suffer?" He fired. The bullet hit Harlan's shoulder, but the wound closed instantly, red metal growing over it. "Foolish," Harlan said, his voice deepening. "Do you think death means anything now?" The floor cracked open beneath them, metal tendrils rising like serpents. "Run!" Lee shouted. The team scattered, firing wildly. Sparks and smoke filled the air. Rao pulled Lee into a maintenance shaft. "He's not human anymore," he gasped. "He's a part of it." Lee gritted her teeth. "Then we destroy both." They crawled through the narrow passage, following the faint hum of the ship's core. The deeper they went, the stronger the red glow became. At the end of the tunnel, a massive structure pulsed like a heart, connected to thousands of glowing cables. "That's it," Rao whispered. "The source." Lee nodded. "If we overload the fusion cells, it'll burn everything inside this ship, including him." They planted charges along the core's base. "Ready?" she asked. Rao nodded. "Let's finish this." As they turned to leave, Arlen's voice echoed through the walls. "You can't destroy evolution, Lee. You're only delaying it." The tendrils began to move again, reaching toward them. "Go!" she yelled. They ran through the shaking corridors, alarms blaring. The charges beeped faster. At the final hatch, Rao pushed her ahead. "You first!" "No, we go together!" She shouted. "Just go!" he said, slamming the door shut behind her. Lee screamed his name, pounding on the glass. Rao smiled faintly from the other side. "Tell Earth," he said. The Admiral's dream died here. The explosion ripped through the Leviathan. Outside, the wreck burned brighter than a star. Lee's ship, waiting nearby, was thrown backward by the shockwave. On the bridge, she watched the light fade. Her hands shook as she whispered, "Goodbye, Rao." Silence followed. The scanners showed nothing alive. No signals, no red light, just the cold emptiness of space. But far away, on a distant relay station, a faint voice whispered through the static. "Deathworlders never die." And somewhere, deep in the shadows of the galaxy, something answered the call. The vast emptiness of space shimmered with distant starlight, silent and endless, yet something new stirred within that silence. Deep in the ruins of what was once the Zaan system, fragments of twisted metal floated aimlessly. Among them, a single glowing shard pulsed faintly with red light. The galaxy believed the Deathworlder fleet was gone, erased by their final sacrifice. But death, as it turned out, was never the end for humanity. On a small outpost near the edge of Terran territory, Commander Lee sat at her desk, her hands shaking slightly as she stared at the latest transmission logs. For months, strange signals had been appearing, short bursts of coded pulses, each carrying the same 3 words: "We are awake." She rubbed her temples. "It can't be them," she muttered. "We destroyed the source. The fleet is gone." Her assistant, Lieutenant Kara, entered the room. "Ma'am, another transmission just came through." "It's stronger this time." Lee looked up sharply. "From where?" "From the Perseus Drift," Kara said. "And it's not just a message. It's coordinates." Lee stood up, the color draining from her face. "Prepare a recon team. We're going to see what's out there." Kara hesitated. "Ma'am, Earth Command won't approve. That sector's classified off-limits." "Then we go off the record," Lee said coldly. "If this is what I think it is, waiting will only make it worse." Within hours, the stealth cruiser Vigil was back in the void, gliding through the endless dark. The coordinates led them to a dense nebula, its clouds glowing blue and gold. The ship entered cautiously, sensors sweeping the thick mist. "I don't like this," Kara said quietly. "No readings, no signals. It's too quiet." Lee's eyes stayed fixed on the front screen. "That's what worries me." Suddenly, the ship's alarms blared. "Massive object detected," shouted the pilot. The nebula thinned and something enormous emerged from the fog. A ship, bigger than the Leviathan, darker than the void itself. Its surface shimmered with red veins of light. Moving like living blood, Kara gasped. "By all the stars." "What is that?" Lee's voice was barely a whisper. "It's human. Or it used to be." The AI on board spoke. "No known records match this vessel, however. Identification fragments suggest TSS Leviathan." The bridge went silent. Kara turned slowly. "That's impossible. The Leviathan was destroyed." Lee's hands trembled. "It was, but what if it wasn't? What if it rebuilt itself?" A voice crackled through the comms, faint but familiar. "Commander Lee." She froze, her heart pounding. "Admiral," she whispered, "is that you?" The voice continued, stronger this time. "You shouldn't have come here. What happened to you?" Lee asked. "What have you become?" There was a long pause, then the voice replied, "I became what humanity was meant to be." The massive ship's engines roared to life, sending ripples through the nebula. "It's charging weapons," Kara shouted. "Evasive maneuvers!" The Vigil swerved hard, a beam of red energy slicing past them, shaking the ship violently. "He's attacking us!" Lee yelled, "Fire countermeasures!" Missiles streaked through space, but the Leviathan's defense grid shredded them instantly. Through the chaos, Harlan's voice echoed again. "You don't understand, Lee. Humanity was born on a death world. We survived everything the universe threw at us. Now we've merged with what we feared. We are the next evolution," Lee shouted back. "You've turned yourself into a machine that kills everything it touches." Harlan's tone turned almost gentle. "You call it killing, I call it cleansing." The Vigil took another hit, alarms blaring. "Shields at 20%. Kara shouted. Lee gritted her teeth. "We can't fight him. He knows every move we'll make. Every tactic he taught us." She turned to the AI. "Find me a weak point." The AI hesitated. None detected, however. "I'm picking up a secondary energy source within the ship's central core. Possibly a biological signal." Lee's eyes widened. "Biological? Then he's still in there." She grabbed her gear. "Prep an assault pod. I'm boarding that ship." Kara grabbed her arm. "Are you insane? That thing will tear us apart." Lee met her eyes. "He was my commander, my friend. If there's even a piece of him left, I have to reach it." Moments later, the assault pod shot through the void, slamming into the hull of the Leviathan. Sparks flew as Lee cut through the metal. Stepping inside, the air was thick and warm, glowing red from the pulsating walls. "Harlan!" she shouted, her voice echoing. "I'm here, show yourself." The walls shifted, forming shapes, human faces emerging from the metal, whispering her name. "Lee! Lee!" She followed the voices into the central chamber. There, suspended in a web of cables, was Admiral Harlan. His body was half human, half machine, his eyes glowing faintly. "You came," he said softly. Lee raised her weapon. "What are you doing?" "Building the future," he replied calmly. "When I merged with the core, I saw it all. The galaxy is doomed to repeat its wars. We can stop that cycle. We can become one mind. One will. You're not saving anyone," Lee said, tears in her eyes. "You're erasing everything human about us." Harlan looked at her sadly. "Then you learned nothing from me." The ship trembled, alarms blaring around them. "You're too late," he said. "The network is already spreading beyond this system." Lee stepped closer, lowering her weapon slightly. "If there's still a part of you left, help me stop it." For a brief second, the human in him flickered, his voice softened. "I never wanted this," he whispered. "I only wanted to protect humanity." Lee nodded. "Then do it. Help me end this." Harlan's eyes dimmed as he looked around. "If I trigger the self-destruct, it will take the network down, but I'll die with it." "You died once already," she said quietly. "Do it for what's left of us." He smiled faintly. The same weary smile she remembered from the old wars. "Goodbye, Lee." He reached into the core and pressed his hand against the glowing surface. The entire ship began to shake violently. "You need to go now," he said. Lee ran toward the escape bay, the walls collapsing around her as she launched herself out into space. The Leviathan erupted into a storm of light. The explosion consumed the nebula, wiping away the red glow forever on the Vigil. Kara watched the screens as the readings vanished. "The signal's gone," she said softly. Lee's voice came through the comms, tired but steady. "It's over, but far away." In a dark corner of the galaxy, a tiny fragment of red metal drifted through the void, pulsing faintly, and a whisper followed it like a ghost. "Death worlders never end. They evolve."